to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
President Bertoni,
Here.
Director Blust,
Here.
Vice President Britton,
Here.
Director Grab,
Here.
And
Director Gibson.
Under.
Director Gibson,
Here.
Director Houghton,
Here.
Director Kring.
he's here.
He's here.
Mute.
Here.
Director McNeil,
Present.
Director Wisdom.
Here.
Thank you. Now, public input on action items. The Downingtown Board of Directors encourages public comment from its citizens. Each community member may speak for a period of no longer than 5 minutes. Please understand that this is not a time for dialogue with the board. Rather, the board will listen to all comments and consider them in further deliberations. Our individual emails addresses are on the website if you'd like to contact your individual board representative. We ask that you please direct complaints of a personnel nature regarding an individual employee directly to the superintendent. Ms. Warhay, I understand we have some public input.
We do. Abigail Gauntlet. I'm a 10th grader at Downingtown High School East. For virtual instruction, students need asynchronous days. If a school day is filled with Zoom calls, students have no time to complete all their classwork or homework during the school day. Calls are exhausting, so students have less energy to learn. I have noticed that as the quantity of Zooms during the school week increased, my performance and grades decreased. Please give students our asynchronous days back. Thank you. Kristen Byler from East Brandywine Township. I know the school has to make very tough decisions for the best interest of the kids during all of this. However, what I see is that my kids are worse when not in school at all. They are moody, don't do their homework, their grades suffer, and they don't learn much at all. It's not for a lack of effort from the teachers, but it's the downfall of virtual. I think if parents see unsafe, then you have given parents who feel this way a safe option, virtual or cyber. For those of us that see the benefit to in-person learning for our kids, let us have the option as well. Let us choose to send our kids until there is a sign of infection spreading in the schools individually. My kids will be devastated if schools close, and I'm the one who will have to deal with it, not the district. I will once again have no support or help for my kids to succeed and learn this year if you send them all virtual. I have to sit one-on-one with my kindergartner for the entire time to help him read, follow directions, pay attention, and do the work with him since he's not able to do it totally independently like the older kids. The kids are the ones that we are failing with making the choice for the parent. Our kids will already be behind from last school year, and now due to this school year are further behind. This is a long-term issue that will create issues for years to come from the lack of being taught skills due to the virtual environment. Not to mention, let's talk about the kids that have IEPs that need the extra help. Let's keep those kids in school and the younger learners who can't do virtual alone. Show others we can do this, and we've been doing great at hybrid. Let's show other districts we can be leaders in this industry and make it happen safely for the best interest of the kids. Let's put the kids first. Jackie Hutton from East Brandywine Township. All studies point to students should be full-time in person at school even during the pandemic. Please put our kids back in school so that they don't fall behind. These two days a week have been a good start, but we need to get back to some sort of normalcy for our children. Wendy Friedland from East Brandywine Township. I want to express appreciation to Downingtown and the teachers for working so hard to get our kids back to school safely. Our children need some normalcy, and the district has done a great job of transitioning. Carrie Corrigan from Upper Euclid Township. Please keep our schools open. According to the number of governors, including Governor Wolf and the CDC, school is the safest place for children. Downingtown teachers and staff have done an excellent job at keeping our children safe. Our children deserve the right to learn in person. Heather Barrett from West Bradford Township. I can't even begin to describe my disappointment with both the staggered model itself and your decision to continue on this path in the face of increasing metrics. I will not sugarcoat this by saying that you have a hard decision or thank you for all the thought that has gone into it, as neither of those appear to be true. It should be a very simple decision, one supported by science, facts, and the metrics that you told us for months you would follow. First, kudos to our teachers for rolling with the punches that they are being dealt by an irresponsible administration. They have gone above and beyond what should be asked of an employee, and the district should be ashamed of their actions, which continue to put them in harm's way. You have placed them in an impossible situation. Many are afraid but can't afford to lose their jobs. Many are overworked and exhausted, but they continue on without a choice to do their jobs safely. The purpose of our schools is to educate our students, not provide a social outlet. That is the responsibility of parents. While both of my children were happy to see their friends, the quality of their learning has not been improved in any way in the staggered model. In fact, it is worse. My son's third grade teacher is doing a wonderful job of trying to keep up with both the students at home and in the classroom. However, he mainly zones out on the days when he's home. This was not the case when everyone was virtual and the teacher could focus on everyone in the same way. In the middle school, many teachers are not requiring students to have cameras on, and with few exceptions, my 8th grader is mainly ignored on the day she is home. This is what you call an improvement from fully virtual. This is better for our students. This is worth the 12 hours of social time each week. The new Chester County Health Department guidance flies directly in the face of CHOP guidance for area schools to move to virtual immediately. In addition, moving the target to 3 weeks and using the new loopholes in the Chester County Health Department guidance of waiting for breakouts in a certain school and/or doing phased return to virtual defeats the purpose of metrics that are supposed to be preventative. While you wait until we have a breakout that then invades our community, will you wait for a death to make the right call? Will it have to be worth the extra 12 hours of socialization for our students? Finally, the argument that parents have the option for fully virtual, where their kids can be completely ignored every day of the week, or cyber, where they get even less attention, is absurd. Those are not options, yet that's where we find ourselves. The quest for the return to normalcy is directly contradicted by the data. As of November 20th, the incidence rate more than doubled in 2 weeks and was more than twice the very high threshold minimum. The PCR test positivity rate is 1.5% away from the very high threshold as well. As of November 23rd, 16% of all Chester County cases are ages 0 to 19. The death rate in Chester County is 37%. It does not appear that things will be normal anytime soon, and the numbers are not in our favor. Other schools in our area are doing the smart thing and are remaining or returning to virtual. Instead, Downingtown is keeping everyone in harm's way and spending countless dollars to do it. The schools need to consider the ramifications of their actions on the community at large. Your excuse that children are not becoming infected or spreading it at schools is reckless. As one, it only takes one student and one day to have a super spreader event. And two, any one of them could bring it home to the community at any time. I implore you to consider the quality of learning, but even more importantly, the safety of our students, staff, and community. Make the right call and return to fully virtual now. Nora Petrovsky from Euclid Township. I can truly see both sides of the argument when it comes to wanting your kids in school and wanting them home. I understand that our schools are taking preventative measures to stop the spread, but based on the astronomical community numbers, I find it difficult to believe that students are not asymptomatic carriers. But here's the thing that I really want people to know, including our administration. Whenever I hear you have a choice to keep your kids virtual, I cringe. Yes, I have that choice, but that same choice will push my children further and further behind. While our fully virtual experience may not have been ideal, I think that we were able to get a rhythm going and the teachers adapted nicely. Once we were in a hybrid mode, it is extremely difficult for children who stay virtual to get the same educational experience as those who are in the classroom. This is through no fault of our teachers. They are doing an incredible job. But the reality of the situation is that expecting the level of education to be the same for virtual kids during this hybrid mode is completely unreasonable. Angie Weldon from Wallace Township. Please keep the option of an in-person school open. We are begging you. My 7th grader with an IEP for reading was allowed to attend 4 days in person for the past 2 weeks. For the first time this school year, he is no longer failing every class. In fact, he has B's and A's since starting in person because he absolutely cannot learn virtually and self-regulate his own education. It's irresponsible to ask kids to teach themselves. He needs a teacher in person. My 1st grader has learned more than 3 weeks of 2-day in-person schooling than more in 3 weeks, 2 days in person than in the last 3 months combined. All 4 of my kids beg to go to school, wear masks diligently, will obey any rules you put on them just to stay in person at school. Please, we are begging you. In-person school is vitally important to our children and our society. As a community, we will all eventually be exposed to the virus. We are taking precautions, but we cannot shut down our lives again. The long-term effects are too great to overcome. Please give the option for in-person and virtual and allow those who want to stay home to do so and those who want to be in person to do so. Jessie Neff from Euclid Township. So grateful to have the kids back in school. As Wolf has stated, they should be there. We must keep them in and focus on closing areas where the disease is spreading. Thank you for prioritizing the kids and keeping them in school. Kelly Stanton from West Bradford Township. Greetings, Dr. Lenardi and the Downingtown School Board. I'm writing to first thank you for all your hard work and dedication to our students and working relentlessly to get our students back to in-person learning. I can attest the experience is night and day for my children since we've returned to the building. My son, 3rd grade, is no longer in tears, overwhelmed with the virtual-only outlook. Even with only 2 days per week, I've watched his emotional and academic needs change in a very positive way, and I am personally begging you to please keep the momentum moving in the direction of a full in-person return and not regress back to virtual. I know it's common knowledge that now that Governor Wolf, the CDC director, and scientists are in full support of in-person for the very reasons I'm writing. Thank you for your time and dedication to our students. Sophia Pargamatnikas from West Pikeland Township. Hello, we are writing this memo to urge the board to keep schools open based on the joint message from Northeastern governors, including Tom Wolf, on how important it is to keep in-person education. Medical research, as well as the data from Northeastern states from across the country and from around the world, make clear that in-person learning is safe when appropriate protections are in place, even in the communities with high risks. In-person learning is the best possible scenario for children, especially those with special needs and from low-income families. There is also growing evidence that the more time children spend outside of school increases the risk of mental health harm and affects their ability to truly learn. The same was supported recently by the CDC director, Dr. Robert Redfield. He said that K-12 schools should remain open because data shows that schools are among the safest places that kids can be from the pandemic, and attempts to close schools are nothing more than an emotional response. We hope that the board will support the decision to keep schools open. Thank you. Michelle Epstein from Upper Euclid Township. I would like to make a part of the record that Mrs. Marissa Marks has done an exceptional job at Shimona Creek 3rd grade. She is engaging, energetic, and supportive. Her passion for teaching and her students is evident every single day. She's a rock star. Nadine Holmes from West Bradford Township. I am pleading with you not to return to an all virtual format. In these few short weeks since returning to school, my son's grades have realized a remarkable improvement. I believe this is due in part to being face-to-face with his teachers. Being physically present is requiring him to be accountable for his work. It is majorly difficult for me to manage him and my work at the same time. Judging by his first marking period's grades, you can clearly see why I'm taking such a strong stance. Most importantly, he's a happier kid since returning to school. His mental health has really taken a beating. Please heavily consider my statement. Thank you. Elsie Lucas from West Bradford Township. Please don't shut down the schools again. I just got my 8-year-old daughter, who is having trouble reading, an IEP where she can go to school all 4 days. She is not doing well with Zooms and is falling more and more behind. She is in second grade and barely reading at the first grade level. This will only make things worse for her. The schools have been doing a great job with keeping isolated incidents contained. Just because there is a rise in cases doesn't mean the schools need to shut down. Megan Ittrey from West Bradford Township. Thank you for your efforts in bringing our kids back into the classrooms. Although many of our neighboring districts have gone virtual again, we can follow the science and continue to provide in-person education as long as we have enough staff to support our students. Even our governor, who has been very strict with measures to mitigate the impact of COVID-19, is recommending we keep schools open. Dr. Lenardi's last update was spot on when it comes to evaluating on a case-by-case basis, possibly closing a classroom or a school only when absolutely necessary. A blanket closure will set us back after coming so far. There are many aspects of safety and well-being that need to be taken into account, and closing schools puts many children at risk for harm in a variety of ways. We need to continue to provide an in-person option. Jill Bice from East Brandywine Township. Please continue in-person school. My children are learning more, their mental health is better, and they are generally happier. Cyber Academy and watching Zoom is available to anyone who isn't comfortable going in person. The World Health Organization, the CDC, the American Academy of Pediatrics, the governor of PA all agree our kids need to be in person. The virtual learning is causing a learning gap that is going to be hard to repair. Please continue with your plan from October. Kara Butler from Upper Euclid Township. Please keep schools open. Numerous studies have shown that the virus is not spreading in schools and children are doing better emotionally, mentally, and academically when schools are open. The governor is also not recommending schools close. My two children are thrilled to be back in 2 days a week, and in particular, my sixth grader is happier and finding it easier to stay organized and on top of his assignments. Those who want to keep their children home and virtual have that choice. Please allow those of us who want to keep our kids in the building a choice as well. Junyi Yang from Upper Euclid Township. Will we go to online since the cases are surging? Nanette Coleman, Wallace Township. As we all know, the COVID pandemic is always evolving. I understand that also means the guidelines the district will and have been following will also evolve. That being said, the district provided a set of guidelines, and now it seems we are flying by the seat of our pants. I would like to see the new guidelines. For example, if we are throwing the county numbers out, what is the basis? How many positive cases in a school will lead to closing? It sounds like the decision will be on a school by school basis. Corey Lambert from West Bradford Township. My heart absolutely breaks for the disservice being done to our children and their lack of opportunity to learn in an ideal environment. Please, please keep the schools open for in-person education. Melissa Izakowski from Euclid Township. The teachers have been wonderful during the return to the hybrid model. The mental health of my third grader is much better. Please consider this when voting, as the numbers do not lie. Schools are the safest place for these kids. In addition, we are on the heels of a vaccine, and I work in healthcare. The kids need to be in school for as many days as possible. The families that choose to keep theirs homes can do that, but I need my kids in school. Monica Eagles from Easttown Township. I urge you to keep the schools open. The governors of Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and New York have publicly stated that schools are safe. The CDC has stated the schools are safe. The numbers do not support closing schools, even though the cases are rising. They are not originating in schools. The mental and physical health of our children is suffering enough with all of the screen time. Kids need to be in school. Kellyanne Mordowski from West Bradford Township. Please consider full in-person schooling. The full-day Zoom sessions are helping to get the kids back on to the velocity of what they would have accomplished in prior years. Both my children approximate that they are only covering about 50 to 60% of what they would have covered in a normal year. What is the plan to fill those gaps? Once the student is in high school, there is no ability to go back the next year and cover the subject material that's not covered from the year before. We are doing a great disservice to our future by not having students back in person full time. Very plainly, you have provided choice for those that wish to not be in person. You have given options to those that only want hybrid, but you've not given choice to those who want full-time in person. Seems that only those that can afford private schooling are afforded that option. Dina Tomlinson from East Brandywine Township. My third grader has done nothing but flourish as school has been back in person. We are fortunate that she has been able to go back 4 days a week because she has an IEP objectives that require her extra accommodations. She was depressed, anxious, and falling more and more behind during the 8 weeks of the virtual learning. Every day was a horrible struggle to get her in front of the computer, to even have to tell her that we need to go back and do what would be so detrimental to her mental state. She loves going to school. She even asked me on Sunday if it was a school day and was sad when I told her it was the weekend. These kids need to be in school. The data does nothing but prove that schools do not circulate the virus. And if families can be vigilant in their efforts to keep themselves safe and accountable, there is no reason we cannot continue. We hold back on many, many things just so our daughter can attend school. I'm sure most other families as well. Even the governor has stated it is safe for them. Please, please, please don't shut us down again. It will break the heart and spirit of so many children in this district. Please keep us open. Gianna Cantonese from East Brandywine Township. I am a sophomore at Downingtown West High School, and I would like to say how disappointed I am with the school board on their decisions this year and the fact that they would even consider returning to completely virtual learning. I, as an honor student with a 4.3 GPA, have to admit that while online, I learned absolutely nothing in most of my classes. I know I'm not the only one who agrees because all of my classmates and friends have the same complaints. The majority of students have trouble learning without being in person, myself included, and my grades have gotten worse as the result of being home for such a long period of time. There is no motivation or will to learn when we are at home. To me, this is because it does not feel like school at all. It causes me not to do assignments when, if I were in school every day, I would absolutely never do. Although the lack of education is a major problem, it is the least of my concerns. Mental health is a rising problem throughout teenagers in the U.S. I, along with a large enough group of my friends, would say that as a result of virtual learning, have suffered greatly with depression, anxiety, and other serious mental health issues. Teenagers need to be in an environment such as school in order to develop properly and be happy. When learning at home, students are deprived of this necessary element and forced to find coping mechanisms, some of which may be very unhealthy. I am sincerely concerned for the entirety of the student body as suicide is a growing epidemic. There have been many deaths by suicide in Downingtown, and I would hate to see another one. But at this rate, I would personally not be surprised if there was. In my opinion, Downingtown is doing next to nothing to help students who may be struggling with suicidal thoughts and depression. Without guidance counselors and resources in front of us, there is very little chance someone will reach out for help unless a loved one notices their struggle. However, symptoms of depression and illnesses such as are easily hidden and practically invisible. I understand COVID-19 is a problem, but it is nowhere near as concerning to me as the suicide crisis. I hope this comment finds you well and you give it some thought before sweeping it under the rug. Katie Parcell from Upper Euclid Township. Mrs. Walls at Lineville Elementary is amazing. She's attentive, the greatest advocate for students and parents, and is genuinely a good person who wants kids to enjoy school. We couldn't ask for a better teacher as our kindergartner navigates a new school and a very different school year. She's on our list of things we are most thankful for this Thanksgiving. Thank you, Downingtown, for hiring her. Henry Liu from West Bradford Township. Has anyone acknowledged that hybrid and virtual has been a complete failure? At this point at STEM, neither of my children have a single class where more than 5 students show up in person. Most classes are cut short. I can't completely fault the teachers because who would want to talk into a computer staring at 30 black muted boxes? What is it going to take for Downingtown to acknowledge that virtual is a failure? How long is Downingtown going to let this happen? I have come to the realization that the current school year is doomed. Also, there is no projection that children will be vaccinated before the 21-22 school year. Is Downingtown willing to continue this path for another year? Ashley Boyd from Euclid Township. As I read the extreme points of view from both ends of the spectrum, it is clear to me that no matter what the board and Downingtown administration decide, you cannot please everyone. I want to take the time to thank you all for your tireless dedication. I know how much deliberation is going into making these decisions, and I thank you for making the hard choices for the families of our district. You won't please anyone, no matter what you do, but I know you are making those hard choices with the best interests of the students and families in mind. Thank you. Michelle Smith from Upper Euclid Township. Given the rise in cases in our county, I continue to be concerned about the teachers in our district. I understand the need and desire to keep younger kids in the classroom, but I would advocate that we reconsider this for the middle and high school grades. At the secondary level, teachers are exposed to many more kids, and kids interact with multiple teachers in a given day. A single positive kid can infect 6 to 7 teachers. By the time spread happens, it will be too late, and during a time when hospital beds and healthcare is at a premium. I understand that many children struggle in the virtual environment, but they will struggle more to learn chemistry and calculus without any teachers at all. Veronica Namaro from Euclid Township. I have 4 kids in the district. My concern at this point is a very high positivity rate in our community. The argument stands that there is no evidence of significant spread in our schools. Therefore, it must be safe, no matter what the positivity rate is in our community. I find that logic to be severely flawed due to the fact that our district is not doing surveillance by randomly testing students and completely overlooking the fact that 50% of new COVID cases are infected by asymptomatic carriers, which children tend to be. There is no evidence of spread in schools because we are not testing asymptomatic students, yet the numbers continue to rise in our community. How many dead parents and teachers is it going to take for us to get into our heads and out of the sand? Please stop going by metrics that don't exist and start gathering real data to support the choice to stay open or not. Muriel Heron from East Brandywine Township. High schoolers need to be in school learning as much as the little ones. You can't learn geometry and chemistry via a Zoom class. They will never get admitted to college if the school shut down again and they miss out on months of a proper education. Lindsay Bretzendahl from West Bradford Township. If you could please take a few minutes of your time to express, if I could take a few minutes of my time to express my deep concern for the continued virtual hybrid education that Downingtown is providing to students around the area. My son, 7 years old in 2nd grade, has not only fallen so far behind in school that he has regressed in his learning, but he is now in tears every day that he is virtual and expresses daily how much he hates school. This was a child who loved school, loved helping other students, loved being engaged with his teacher, loved math and other subjects, loved going to the library and spending time with the librarian to learn about new topics and books to read. Now I watch him struggle to stay focused. I watch him fall behind during Zooms because he can't effectively ask questions of his teacher and cannot stay focused with tons of other kids moving and talking and asking questions. He no longer understands his math. He dislikes his reading, but with the increase in iPad time, he certainly knows how to use YouTube, something I don't permit in our home, but it's on the DASD iPads. This is all an utter disaster. He is sad, disconnected, and completely hates to learn. This is not an education. That being said, my son has shown improvements on the days he is in school. On those days, he comes home so unbelievably happy, and even his teacher reports that he is more engaged. In order for him to, as an elementary student, to learn, he must be in school in person. Plenty of evidence and research now suggests that schools, particularly elementary schools, should remain in person. Dr. Scott Gottlieb, contributor to CNBC and former FDA commissioner and current Pfizer board of director, stated last week we should keep schools open. The U.S. government's COVID task force reported last week that the task force does not support closing schools. And even Governor Wolf has now stated that schools should remain open and even should move from hybrid to fully in person, as it is the best possible scenario for children. Even other countries have kept their schools open despite other closures because they recognize the significance and importance of children's education. A recent article came out stating that Not sending kids to school also costs lives, specifically referencing the severe and lifelong impact of missing months of school, which include lower chances of graduating high school, lower life expectancy, more likely to smoke or drink, etc. There is a domino effect here that perhaps you won't feel now, but we parents and our children will feel this for a lifetime if Downingtown doesn't get this right and return our youth, particularly our elementary kids, back to school full time. Their lives depend on it, and I'm depending on you and the board to make the right choice to move our kids back into the classroom. Virtual hybrid learning is failing them all miserably. In fact, I'm looking into private schools because I care about my son's education and feel like I have no other choice. I should have a choice for my son to have in-person learning. I only wish that Chester County and the Downingtown Board would recognize how much this current model isn't working. Our kids' lives depend on it. Their future depends on having access to good quality in-person education. Please reopen our schools. Rachel Miller from Euclid Township. The governor is not recommending schools close, and we have not had large transmission in our school buildings. Schools are not super spreaders. Please continue to give Downingtown families a choice for real in-person learning and continue offering the hybrid choice, but much better for overall children's mental, emotional, social, educational well-being would be 5 days a week. Please continue to follow through and look at each of the district schools on a school-by-school basis versus entire district blanket statements. Elementary children are not spreading the virus, and they need to be in person during this formative, all-encompassing developmental period of their young emotional, social, physical, mental, and educational lives. Jennifer Williams, East Count Township. Please do not go all virtual. On the first day back, my junior, Alicia Williams, came home and says, finally, I can focus. She is a child that needs structure and thrives in in-person learning. She is okay at home, but isn't the same. She doesn't like virtual school. Please consider staying hybrid. I'm begging. I can only speak for my child. She's not getting the education she deserves virtually. Lauren Lang from Upper Euclid Township. After almost a month of hybrid learning, I want to thank you all, but especially thank the administration and staff at Springton Manor Elementary for the opportunity for my children to participate in in-person learning. Our family has been so pleased by the safety precautions put into place, and we have every confidence that my kindergartner and third grader are and will continue to be safe in this environment. The difference my husband and I have seen in my children over the past month is incredible. They are thriving educationally, mentally, and emotionally. I realize and appreciate that the decisions you have and will continue to make will be difficult ones. As you continue to review the metrics and make decisions moving forward, please consider the science and support behind keeping our children in school. Parents who do not feel safe have the choice to keep their children at home and to learn virtually. Please allow the parents who do see the value of in-person learning the choice as well for as long as possible. Kim Estrina from Upper Euclid Township. Please keep these kids in school. The hybrid method is a good compromise and in my opinion is working. I'm seeing increased anxiety in kids working only from Zoom. It's not healthy. The mask and other protocols used in school also seems to be effective, so please consider this on future votes regarding whether they should be at home or in school. Please, they need to be in school. Karen Petrol from West Bradford Township. Hi, I am thankful for the hybrid way that Downingtown is offering. It gives some normalcy to my kids. The teachers, school, and support staff are doing a great job. I substitute teach for the primary grades in the district, so I have a firsthand knowledge of all the hard work that the schools are doing to make learning engaging and fun. It has been great seeing kids running around at recess and interacting with them in class and at home. While I am concerned about raising COVID counts, I hope that the district can keep schools open and if needed to shut them down, do it on a school-by-school basis. There is no easy way to please everyone, but I believe that if we all do our part, we can make things possible for our kids. Thank you. Bridget Betty from West Bradford Township. I am writing to share with you our daughter's great success with the transition to in-person schooling. Our daughter qualifies for 4-day instruction at Bradford Heights, and we have seen her joy and self-confidence return. She is showing progress for the first time in 2 years, and we fear that a return to virtual will stall the progress she is making with her amazing teaching team. Please keep the schools open for the good of all the children in Downingtown. Thank you to everyone for your hard work. Dr. Jessica Feliciano from West Bradford Township. It would be helpful and telling if we include the dashboard how many close contacts have been identified by each school after a confirmed COVID-19 test. Can the district comment on how many it has been as a whole? Deborah Savely from Upper Euclid Township. We have entrusted our children to your care. It is your duty as elected officials to honor the voices of all constituents. There are many who continue to feel in-person is the healthiest option for our children. Many who want a choice. Please continue to honor that with an in-person option. Thank you. Bethany Reynolds from West Bradford Township. First, I appreciate so much the teachers who are going into school to teach every day. I also support any decision taken by the board to keep teachers and children safe with COVID numbers rising. There's a concern amongst parents that schools will close again. If the decision is taken to close school post-Thanksgiving, will the in-school pilot program for those with IEPs and specifically the Bridges program at Shimona Creek remain functioning? Mike Welsh from Euclid Township. My son is in kindergarten. He was assessed on October 11th after virtual school for 6 weeks and knew 11 of 26 alphabet letters and 0 sight words. He was reassessed in the last week after a total of 7 in-school days and knows 24 out of 26 letters and 11 sight words. Children need to be in school to learn. Jody Young from West Pikeland Township. Thank you to the board, Dr. Lenardi, and the administrators and teachers for all you've done for our children over the past 8 months. I am grateful for the decisions you've made because it's clearly been in the best interest of our school, of our children, and our community. In our home, online schooling went smoothly thanks to our fantastic teacher at Pickering Valley. The change to hybrid was more difficult. Our child loves being in school and comes home happy and energized, but the 2 long days at home, being on an iPad for 6.5 hours, have been tough. We have faith you will continue to make informed decisions and you have our family's support and appreciation. Sarah Smith from West Bradford Township. I applaud your recent updated school COVID-19 guidelines that were made in collaboration with the Chester County Health Department. I believe these guidelines are data-driven, make sense, looking at outbreaks among specific classrooms and schools. As you consider the upcoming weeks, please stick to these guidelines, look at the data, listen to recommendations from our leaders, and even the director of the CDC, who say the safest place for children to be is in school. We must continue to make every effort to keep our schools open. Since beginning hybrid, my children have had less angry and sad days. My youngest has made such progress in reading. When I pick them up at the end of the day, they are so eager to tell me what they've learned and which friends they saw over lunch or recess. Please stick to your guidelines. Our children deserve to be in school. Thank you for your dedication and hard work. Gina Zayak from Euclid Township. Please stick with your previous statement and CDC guidelines that you will evaluate 2-week school closures by school when and if there are issues. These students need in-person learning, and if 2 days a week is all they can get, then it's better than nothing, especially elementary kids. They need to be in person. Sticking them on iPads to do Epic and Nearpods is not effective. Our kids deserve a good education, and for the first time in our 6 years in the district, they aren't getting it. Not for the teachers' lack of trying. Thank you. Michael Hendrickson from Euclid Township. Children need to be in school. We do more harm than good for them by putting them all virtual. While there are risks, there have been virtually no evidence that the in-person learning has caused a spike in infections, and the numbers further show kids are not getting as sick when they do become infected. I want to commend Downingtown Area School District for what you have done so far handling this situation. My hope is that you take the path of shutting down classrooms or buildings temporarily when there are known exposures or outbreaks, as opposed to completely shut down based on off-county statistics. Thank you. Harul Desi from Euclid Township. I feel that if it has been shown to be safe and there has not been evidence of outbreaks, the students that really benefit from in-person learning should have the option to do so. Younger learners, special needs students, or those that may not have full support they need at home to be successful can hopefully continue to learn in a safe classroom environment that allows them to thrive in ways that virtual learning may not. Kim Doan from Euclid Township. No matter how you decide, you will have half the parents unhappy and many teachers and staff unhappy. I wish you all the luck. Happy Thanksgiving. Jessica Serrano from East Brandywine Township. Please, please, please prioritize the safety of the teachers and staff. Please go back to virtual. If we had used the original numbers we used to shut down in the first place, we would be virtual by now. I'm not willing to put teachers' lives at risk. Our kids will eventually catch up. They are resilient and learning so much more about life as we all live through this together. Thank you for your consideration.
Ms. Warhead, I just wanted to let you know you're within about 30 seconds.
Okay. You want me to read one more?
Yes, that would seem appropriate. Thank you.
Karen Kerr from West Pikeland Township. The spread of COVID is happening outside the schools, not in schools. Although numbers rise, the students need to continue with in-person instruction. Students are not contracting COVID in schools, but in outside activities such as sports. If you want to stop the spread, stop sports, not in-person instruction. That has proven to be the spreader. It is such a disservice to Downingtown students that the first thing to go and the last thing to be reinstated is in-person instruction. It should be the reverse. These students are losing developmental learning that will never be regained. Downingtown has saved money through last spring and this fall by not having the students in school, transportation, utilities, etc. Use that money to provide the resources to keep students in the building, which is the district's job.
Thank you, Ms. Warhay. Moving on, gave us lots to think about as we go into the superintendent's report. Dr. Lenardi?
Thank you, Madam President. Yeah, one of the things that a number of people mentioned in all those comments was the joint governors coming out and saying that students should be in school. That happened earlier in the week, and then Monday there was a press conference and he said something completely different. And I think that's one of the problems we find that with all the various organizations. And the one organization, frankly, that only updated their information once was our very own Chester County Health Department. And that's one of the reasons they've been a good stable force for us. But anyway, there's definitely is some nuances that I'd like to talk to you about and ask you to make some decisions about. So if we just go to the overall slide, Kevin, here's what I'd like to do. So I'd like to review just the latest COVID numbers. I always do that. And then our specifics, I think Director Kring, you had asked for our quarantining versus positives. And then on the other side of the page, the PA Health Department new guidelines. That's the big change. So I'll spend a little bit of time talking there and then just a couple of other quick updates. So first, the COVID updates in Chester County. Here's what I would have sent out to everybody over the weekend. Usually it comes out Friday evening. And if you look there, the week one is the most recent. So we were at 196 on Friday. And just to compare it, on Monday, they do it daily, but they only publish it on Fridays. Monday, the number was 203.2. So it went up a little. And Tuesday, the number was 203.4. So slow rise. And then on the other side, they also look at the PCR percentages. It was 8.54, and these last 2 days it was 8.0 and 7.8. So just it's kind of hovering about where it is. Now, I have been sending those out every Friday. I probably won't do that anymore because we've kind of blown by all the metrics now. We're in the substantial area, and the governor's new guidelines will supersede the Chester County guidelines. So I won't continue to do that. So if you go back to here, the overall COVID case update, the positivity cases, just number of cases in our district for students is 44 and staff is 14. But quarantining, you can look at those numbers, 474 and 123. And that's because there's been so many people that are in contact with other people, oftentimes, in fact, most times outside of our school. And the student numbers are big, as you know, because of East and West football, both having to quarantine because the students were around each other. And one of the big culprits there was that the student got a false negative from a doctor and then went to practices and such. So that always makes it difficult. And so those numbers are quite high. So I just wanted to share that. If you look at each school, let's go to the next slide. Here's the number of schools. So I have student case number, There's all of our 16 schools. So you see like Beaver Creek is first, 0 student cases. Student quarantines, however, there's 9. Staff cases, 0. Staff quarantine, 0. So if you go down, it just shows you all the way across what that looks like. And I'll give you a minute just to look that over. And this is just for your information. And you see, of course, east and west, the big numbers are our student quarantines. And that, of course, is because of the various sports teams where we had to quarantine all the students.
Dr. Lenardi, just to clarify, the governor's ruling is what we have to follow. It's not a recommendation.
That's correct.
Okay.
All right, so I just wanted to show you these because I was asked about how many quarantines, and we do have a lot of quarantines, certainly far greater than our positivity rate. Okay, so if we keep going, let's go on to what happened with the governor. And this came out of the blue, frankly. It's the Pennsylvania Department of Education, the governor's office reported it, and they've interacted with the Pennsylvania Department of Health. So of course, by mandate, we follow whatever the Department of Education says we must follow. So I want to show you 3 slides that look something alike. So if you go to the first slide, here's what it looks like. It says recommendation for small schools, and I put in red there, small schools are fewer than 500 students, of course, pre-K through 12. They should follow this. And if you look at it, it shows the level of community transmission on the side. We are in substantial, so we blow right by low and moderate, and we would look at that lower column. But then in red, I have here, if the number of cases, if there's 1 student or 1 staff, and you go down to substantial, you can keep your school open. I know the writing there is small. It's pretty much says you can stay open. But if you're 2 to 4 students or staff and you go down to substantial, it's closed schools for 3 to 7 days. Now, I might argue that we probably should go 7 days just to be more conservative, but we could go 3. And then if you have 5 or more students or staff combined, you go over to the substantial, and it says closed school for 14 days. And you can see the cursor, if you put it down a little bit, the number 14 is right there. So if you click the next button, these are the schools that in our district have fewer than 500. And it's Beaver Creek, Brandon-Wallace, East Ward, Pickering, and Euclid Hills. Now you see the enrollment though says net enrollment, and that is they actually have more students in this, but you're allowed to take off those students who are full-time DCA. You take that off your total number, so that's why this says net enrollment. You can't, because you're doing hybrid, or because you have some students who Zoom from home, you can't take any of them off. You're only allowed to take your full-time DCA students off. So those numbers are slightly lower than what we really would call our enrollment. Now, if you look at their total cases, we're good to go there. So they're all in zeros. If you go to the next slide, you see the same thing repeated, but now you see at the top, this is for medium-sized school districts. That's 500 to 900 students. All the other verbiage below is pretty much the same, except in red, I put that if you have 1 to 3 students or staff, you stay open. If you have 4 to 6 students or staff, again, you go down to substantial, and you see you close schools again for 3 to 7 days. And then if you have 7+ students, you go down to substantial, and it's 14 days of closure. So if you click again, these are the buildings rather in our district that are between 500 and 900. And again, you see net enrollment. We took out the DCA kids. So you see Bradford Heights, Lineville Elementary, Shimona Creek, Springton Manor, West Bradford, and also the STEM Academy would all fall into these categories. And when you look at their cases, they're 2, 2, 1, 1, 1, 2. And so they are all within the 1 to 3. And so that would allow them to stay open. Now, I will come back and talk about probable cases in a moment, but these are just straight up positive cases. Okay, the final one is for large school buildings, greater than 900. So in our case, this would be, of course, all of our secondary schools, and it shows 1 to 5 students or staff, we stay open. 6 to 10 students or staff, we go down to 3 to 7 days closure. And then 11+ students, you go to 14 days. So that is the new governor's recommendation. Although what I'll tell you is that the board president and the superintendent must sign off on a document that says that we will follow the recommendations. So that makes them a mandate, essentially. So if you click on this, we now have Marsh Creek, Downingtown Middle, Lineville Middle, Downingtown High School East, Downingtown High School West. So these would be the schools in the large category. Again, you see their net enrollment, so it's lower than their real enrollments. And now here's where it gets a little tricky. Our total cases, you see Downingtown Middle is 7. So down below 7 means that that's between 6 and 10. And so they would have to be closed, go virtual. I'm saying closed, but I mean go virtual for 3 to 7 days. Lineville Middle is at 5. They're 1 under what it would mean to close for 3 to 7 days. Downingtown East is 11. That means they would close for 14 or go virtual for 14 days. And Downingtown West is at 10. They are 1 below. Now, here's the interesting thing, and I'm going to ask the board this question. I just got an email. We didn't know in the website, it says positive cases and probable cases can be used for these purposes. And I wasn't sure about that. And so we weren't sure what to actually use. And so the advisor to the Deputy Secretary of the Department of Education just wrote an email that said, for the purposes of these recommendations, a case in a school setting would include any confirmed or probable case of COVID-19 when the individual was physically present in the school setting during the infectious period and not limited to instruction, sports, extracurriculars, etc. So it looks like we're supposed to count both positive cases and probable cases. So if we do that, and that, again, I just got that information. So these are not updated, but I do know what they are based on our current numbers. It's a 14-day rolling period. So we went from November 9th and we looked at the last 14 days in all of our schools. And so what I can tell you is that even though, I'll go backwards, even though West has 10 positive cases, they have 4 probable, which would take them to 14. So likely they're going to end up having to be virtual for 14 days. Downingtown East only has 1 probable, but they're already over. Lineville Middle has 2 probable cases. So added to that 5, that makes them 7. Now they're in the 6 to 10 category to close for 3 to 7 days. And Downingtown Middle currently has 7. They have 5 probables, which would take them to 12, which means they probably should go virtual for 14-day period. Now, I just got that probable information, so that throws us, it doesn't change us a lot, it throws us up a little bit. Kevin, if you would go back to the medium-sized districts, just go back 2 slides if you would. So there, if you look at Lionville Elementary, I want to say one thing about Lionville. They have 2 total cases. However, they have 2 probable cases, which would mean 4, and that would put them in the 4 to 6 category, which means if we used probable cases, they would need to close for 3 to 7 days. So if you follow that, that's all and this just is hot off the press on Monday. So we're just trying to figure it out, asking a lot of questions. So I also believe that if the board approves this, it's a statement that again, the board president and superintendent signed, the board approves, that says that we're going to follow these guidelines. And so if we approve it tonight, it's a little cloudy, but I believe we could start this tomorrow. So actually, in all of these cases, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, Saturday, Sunday, we have 5 kind of free days where no students are in school anyway. So if we wanted to say, well, let's count the probable cases at Lionville Elementary, they would then be virtual for 7 days. 5 of those days would be over this long weekend, and the next 2 days would be Monday and Tuesday, the 30th and the 1st. If we wanted to say, it gives you the liberty of saying 3 to 7 days. If we wanted to say, well, let's just keep them closed for the long holiday and bring them back Monday, we could do that as well. And there's no real right answer to this. It's just how the board feels that what we want to do. If we go back to the high school cases and the middle school cases, we may want to just say, I would certainly make a recommendation that both high schools would go for 14 days of virtual, because I feel certain that of the 4 probables that West will be over easily. And in Downingtown Middle and Lineville, if we use the probables, Downingtown Middle should not be just 7 days, they should be 14 days. But again, we could start tomorrow, and Lineville, we could do either. We could make them the same, or we could just say that they are virtual for 7 days. So that's kind of the issue. Let me just stop there for a minute and answer any questions or get the board's point of view about this.
Could you put up, was there the slide with the probables added in, or you didn't do a slide?
No, I just looked at them and wrote them on my sheet because I didn't think we were counting them. And then in fact, an hour ago, I didn't know we were counting them. I just got the email that said they should be counted. I knew there was some confusion about it. There's also a little bit of confusion about the first date, but I believe if we approve the resolution this evening, I think we could start tomorrow. Summer, you have to start by November 30, but it doesn't say you can't start early. So I think we're okay there.
So what is Lionville's numbers if you include the probables?
4.
Lineville Elementary?
No, Lionville Middle School.
Middle school is 7. So they're in that 6 to 10 range, which means that they would be virtual for 3 to 7 days.
So Dr. Lenardi, when they say the school needs to be closed for X number of days, those are calendar days, not school days, correct?
Right. That's right. And so when we do this, by the way, it's everything's closed. Like you are closed down. So no ELL, no low incidence, no 4 days of special ed, no ACP, no sports, no extracurriculars. For the first 48 hours, at least the building should be closed and then ultimately cleaned. And then I think as the time goes on, teachers could actually teach out of their classrooms. I know several of them have, multiple cameras and such. Principals could be back, secretaries could be back, but absolutely no students for either the 3 to 7 days, whichever we prefer. And then the 14 days is just one number. There's no sliding scale there.
I'd like to know if the board can make a decision if they so choose to, based on the governor's guidance, that maybe we just take a pause as a district for a week or two and then approve this resolution. Like, how flexible is this? I'm trying to understand basically how long are we locking the district into this decision?
We have to sign this and make a decision no later than November 30. It goes into effect November 30. And here's the district's options. Either we can do this, which is follow these guidelines, as well as the masking guidelines and the other guidelines that the governor has put out, and go virtual temporarily with these schools, which is kind of like what we were thinking before, to go school by school. Or the other option, we could say we're going virtual with all schools for a period of 14 days.
No.
So they're the two options. We can't wait. We don't have time. It came out and it's November 30th is when it goes into effect.
So how, is there a way that the board can know, like, right after the Thanksgiving holiday, I think it's my understanding that the health department, as well as CHOP and everyone we've been listening to, believes there's going to be an uptick in cases.
Right.
What I'm hearing is either we pause for 2 weeks and then we make a decision, or we decide right away to just go with a reopening of certain schools based on positivity right after the holiday.
Well, it would be, so on November 30, all the schools that we have that have 0 or 1 or 2 cases, that are below the threshold, they would all be in our staggered model, just like they're doing now. And there's a rolling 14 days. So every day we'd have to look at the positivity cases and the probable cases. And we'd have to say, in fact, parents would have to be at the ready, because we might say, a certain elementary school reached this threshold, and parents, as of tomorrow, for 14 days or 7 days, your elementary school will go virtual. So that's going to be very tricky for parents, but we'll have to do that during that time frame. These schools, we already know they're there, so we could say that right now, and parents could know that we're going to, be virtual for some period of time.
Question. The 3 to 7 days, there's an asterisk after that, and is there a footnote to that? And how did they come up with that range of, why are they, what are they giving us a leeway of 3 to 7 days? Because it sounds like this is mandatory.
Yeah, it's mandatory. I don't know what, I don't know. I can't say. There is an asterisk next to 3. There's also an asterisk next to the 14 days on my sheet. So yeah. I'm not sure what that means.
did they give any guidance on why they're giving us a 4-day, 5-day range, really, if you count all the days?
Right. No, I don't know that at all.
So
What? I'm sorry.
my next question is it's my understanding that the counties have the right, if their measures are stronger than this, their recommendations, we could still follow them. This is just the minimum, correct?
Yes, if Chester County had more stringent recommendations and we wanted to follow them, we could. But if they're more lenient than this, we can't follow them.
So Chester County has not changed their recommendation that if it's over a certain, I think it was 85% positivity, that for 3 weeks that we should close. Can we still have the option to follow that?
No.
So what happens if we don't sign the attestation?
Well, I would want to sign it because I believe I would.
I'm just asking. I'm just
Yeah.
wondering.
I don't think that's an option. I think it's mandated. We
So
have to sign.
you're saying that's what's mandatory.
And so, and what you do is you check off. In fact, I do have the attestation. Kevin, could you just put that up? Because we have 2 choices in there, and I'll show you what it is on the screen so that our public can see it as well. We have to check off a box, and then the board president and the superintendent have to sign. Yeah, it's that one, that last one, right? And just go down a little bit. It says you have to follow all the rules, but you'll see at the very bottom there's two boxes. So good. All right, there's one, or it's a circle, I guess. Yeah, there's 2 things, right? Those 2 things right there. So we have to check off one of those and then sign. I don't know if you can make that any bigger or not.
Dr. Lenardi, can you read the 3 asterisk line for me?
Okay, so so the first thing we'll sign, and this is what I was suggesting we do. We hit the first one there, the first bubble, and we say all or some of the students within the public school entity are currently receiving in-person instruction. We have read, and then these are all the guidelines, effective November 18th, including necessary exceptions, associated guidance, and they're all links, and affirm that the public school entity is complying and will continue to comply and will enforce the updated order of the Secretary of the Pennsylvania Department of Health requiring universal face coverings, including necessary exceptions and associated guidance. So we can check that one, and that means some of our students are in person, which in our case, only the ones that are over the threshold would be off. The other thing we could do, the other box we could, and it says we have read and agreed to the following, and see that the recommended pre-K to 12 school following identification of cases. That's what I just showed you in the 3 slides. The other thing we could do is check the public school entity has transitioned to fully remote learning model and will continue to use a fully remote learning model until the county in which the public school entity is located is no longer experiencing substantial disease transmission for 2 consecutive weeks. So that could be a good long while.
If you read that 3 dots, isn't that basically saying that we can transfer back at any time to in-person?
Yes. Yeah, so this would mean we agree that we want all of our schools to be virtual for some period of time. And then when we want them to transition back, Jane and I have to fill out another one of these and send it in and say that some or all of our schools are transitioning back.
So it's my understanding, like this week we have 5 days. So if we did this till the week after Thanksgiving and revisit it just to see like where the numbers are and let people get a sense of like if their kids are still healthy, we could revisit this. Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, we couldn't. I don't think we could take away the schools that are there, that are like, we've already looked at our 14 days. So we could, I mean, we have until November 30. So if you're asking us to make a decision at the last minute on that Sunday night, we could do that. I'm suggesting that we know who's over, and we probably ought to do it now so families can plan.
All right. So I guess
Are you saying
let me be more exact. So we have a 5-day weekend. So if we gave 14 days for the holiday and we gave an additional couple days for people to get back and get healthy or figure out how their health is, it's my opinion, like we're only looking at 8 days where kids would or would not be in school, right? And so given the transmission and the expected uptick and the rate our hospitals are at, which are near capacity, I'm wondering if, as a good community partner, it's prudent for the board to at least have the discussion about maybe with this kind of transmission, we look at just losing another 8 days.
Do you mean for these particular schools or for all schools?
I mean, for all schools, because I'm concerned about what is going to happen when people return from Thanksgiving.
Gotcha.
So we've always based our decisions on data, and how many schools will not have to close, Dr. Lenardi? On this?
12.
12 will be
11.
11 will be able to continue to have children in school because we have been following safety precautions. And so those schools have not had the number of cases that the guidelines indicate. And I think any day missed from school is problematic, whether it's one or more. It's an issue for children to miss school. If we've always used data, and this is the data we're using, I think this is very sound thinking, that we take a look at each individual building. We know, and I don't know, here's a question that I have, Dr. Lenardi, is the Department of Health in Chester County doing any contact tracing? Because I've just been reading a little bit, and it seems that a very few number of people are the super spreaders. And so you can have 14 cases and only one person be a super spreader for that group. It's about 8%. So is there any contact tracing data in our county? You know that?
I don't know if the data's there, but I do know they're not doing it now because the cases are too high, so it's on us. So for instance, our principals have been buried trying to do the contact tracing in our schools. And so they said that when the Department of Health said when the numbers are lower again, not insubstantial, but lower, they probably will take it over again. I think right now they can't possibly keep up with it. So it's the actual business themselves that has to do the contract tracing. So for us, that's our building principals.
Well, that's a shame because that could be very few individuals who would have to not attend school.
Dr. Lenardi, can you, like on the screen that's up, when it says Downingtown Middle School and they have a total case number of 7, how far back does that go? Like, can you clarify what, are they current cases? Is that how many cases since the beginning of the year?
No, they are, it's a 14-day rolling number. So it went back 14 days to November 9th. So when I first showed you like total cases and quarantining, that was for the whole year early on.
Okay.
They're just for the 14 days. And then it's a little unclear to me how we do this. After we're off for several days, we'll know some cases, but we may not know them all. So I don't know after you're off virtual for 14 days, if it starts fresh, if you just have to keep putting one day away and adding another day. So I think it's going to be a little tricky, but they're calling it a rolling 14-day.
My next question, you talk about probable cases and you just got that email. And so maybe you don't know the answer yet, but if we could find this out, if some of those probable cases are putting us over the numbers to close down some of the schools, what efforts can we make to find out if those probable cases are actual positive? In other words, if are probable cases just someone showing symptoms, and can we make them get a test or get test results? Or
Jen Shealy, how about if you respond to that? Probable, what the definition of probable is?
Sure. So the definition of a probable case right now is somebody who has had direct contact with a positive COVID case and also is then experiencing symptoms. So the health department treats them just as they would a positive case, having them isolate and all of that. And most of them usually do get a test at that point and then often turn positive, not all the time, but often, and at least in our experience. And We're also required to do contact tracing for any probable positives and have people quarantine accordingly, just as they would if it was an actual positive.
I mean, on the Chester County website, just updated today, it said that the negatives were 121,273 versus 11,120 positives. I mean, most people who are being tested are negative. And I'm a little concerned about closing schools based on what might happen after Thanksgiving. It's like closing school when we think there might be snow coming and it never materializes. So I think this data is solid, Dr. Lenardi, and the schools that need to close because we need to follow the guidelines from the state, that makes sense to me.
To know how many students are actually showing up for school.
Well, we haven't, hold that question for 1 second. I have the answer to the asterisk and I have it on my phone, so I want to just say it. If case investigations, contact tracing, and cleaning and disinfecting can be accomplished in a faster time frame, the length of closure time may be shortened. So that's what the asterisk means for the 3 to 7, and I guess for the 14 as well. So I'm not sure how to actually like pragmatically say what that would look like.
Well, I guess that still doesn't quite. Thank you for the answer, but I guess that still doesn't quite give us the whether we're allowed to do 3 days or 7 days. It still says it's more up to the district.
Yeah, that's right.
I'd like to keep that up to our interpretation and keep that determination in our hands.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead, Dr. Britt. I'm sorry.
Well, again, I'd like to know what percentage of our students in the brick and mortar program are actually showing up. I'd also like to understand if hitting the reset button for 14 days off gives us a new slate so that we don't have to worry about like, well, we're going to have a closure here in a week. And quite frankly, I say this because as a board member, and the community should know this, we get all the updates about how many times a day we have an outbreak. And I feel like it's quite frequent. And so I'm wondering, like, how do we help the community have a set direction for the next, and again, we already have 5 days. So for a 2-week reset to get to the 14-day number, we have the next 5 days off, right? How many days of actual instruction are students losing? Because I don't see it as that many because of the hybrid program. You know, you take away 5 from 14, you're talking about 9 days. And at least one of those is a Friday. So
my thought on that is that some of those kids are going all 4 days. Like our most needed kids are kids in learning support and those that are low incidence. It's not 4 days for them. It's 8 days.
I would love to continue to send just those kids to school. Is that a possibility?
No.
Sounds like it. No, we'd have to shut it all down. And that's my concern.
And as a board, we couldn't make that decision?
Wouldn't we have to sign the attestment?
Sign the attestment and make that decision then.
No, the attestment is that the school is closed, is my understanding.
So
if we.
No, we could choose option 1 and keep the schools open for 14 days with just the most vulnerable students. And then we can reset because basically we have a really low number of kids in school. We'll still get that low transmission rate that we need to reopen.
I actually agree with Dr. McNeil that even 1 day out is disconcerting to me because I do think ultimately we are going to have to go virtual, and every day we can get our children in front of with their teachers is a value to our students in building that relationship.
What number of students are showing up, Dr. President?
Well, the ones that are showing up are getting a lot out of it, and Dr. Lenardi
the ones who need it.
So,
what percentage is showing up?
Okay, let me try and answer that question.
The percentage who needs it the most.
I'm going to ask Dr. Reed
Well,
to help.
thank you. Thank you, Director Gibson.
Okay, so we didn't actually keep those numbers. We're trying to look at last week because as the numbers have gone up, we know fewer and fewer kids have been coming. So it's STEM. We have STEM, and I think Dr. Reed, you have a DMS as well. And then we have kind of some guesses from principals, but we didn't actually ask them for those data. But STEM on 11/9, there were 214 students that were showing up. And remember, it's half and half. So on a given day, and by the 11/17, that number was 168. So there are fewer kids coming. And Dr. Reed, can you speak to some of the other schools?
Okay, of course, I'm having connectivity issues when it's my time to speak, so I hope you all can hear me. When the system marks the student absent or present, it is not delineating if they are present at home or present in school. So we had to survey schools and basically ask, did you notice any changes in in-person attendance last week? Some of the schools actually did some physical head counts while the kids were present last week. So the information we have right now is that 6 of the 16 schools had steady attendance rates last week. 3 had a slight decrease in attendance. And then the other 7 showed or marked that they had more of a, I don't call it dramatic decrease, but they had more of a decrease as the week went on. So for example, DMS was one of the schools that had counted. And on Monday, that group, there was 420 kids present. On Wednesday, that same group was down to 388. So that's a difference of 32. Tuesday group was 373, but then on Thursday was down to 332. We'll call that a 41 student difference. We also had some numbers from STEM, but they were steady all week. East had some numbers from Thursday the 19th. They had 340 present out of 660. Okay, so that was actually doing
Monday, right? Because it's 2 days, so that was half the school.
that was a day that they did some physical head count of kids while they were in the cafeteria to
Right,
get
so
that
that
number.
would have been like M to Z though.
Correct, on the 19th.
That's all I mean.
I guess the
Yeah.
board needs to ask themselves, is it a free and appropriate education for every child or just the ones that are willing to take the risks? I guess that's the question.
I think we promised our community a choice.
It's a 2-week reset, Linda, to get back
And
to
I
zero.
think, excuse me, Director Britton, and I
Yeah,
think
yes.
that is what our public deserves, a choice.
What I would
Following
like,
safety measures, of course.
It's free and appropriate for every child, not the ones that are willing to take risks. That's just not the way it is.
I would like to see what the numbers ask that the buildings actually count the students that come in next week, the ones of the schools that are open, so that we have an indication of how many students are interested in the in-school instruction. And again, I do think it's important for children to be in school, and we are trying to give people options.
I'd be in favor of that. And I'd also like to see it broken down. So which parents at 100%, 200%, 300%, like what will the numbers go up to? Because again, we don't have a crystal ball, but we have experts, right? And this whole time the board has said, well, we're going to follow the experts. We all made promises that we were going to follow Chester County guidance. That has not changed. The way the law is written is that you can go above and beyond the state's guidance. So right now, the way the county guidance is, it goes above and beyond. And above 85% over 3 weeks, we're supposed to close, high transmission. So we all made that decision. So I guess my point is to get the 2 weeks number down and start fresh. It just seems prudent to me because you're giving everybody and they're losing minimal days. And then we can revisit this document with fresh numbers.
I understand what you're saying, and I don't completely disagree. But the problem is that in that 2 weeks, we're relying on the entire community to do what they're supposed to do. And they're not going to do that.
Well, here's the problem.
And I don't think it's going to be a reset, but in that time period, our learning support, our autistic support, our kids that need the most education, our kids who don't have the supports at home or whose parents just don't have those capabilities because they exist. Great parents aren't teachers. Teaching takes a very special skill set. Those kids are going to be set back 8 days, 4 days. A one-size-fits-all mentality stopped working. And every governing body has said that. The Pennsylvania Department of Health, Pennsylvania Department of Education, the Chester County Department of Health, even the CDC, and a joint statement by every governor in the Northeast has said that the absolutism of case incidents and PCR isn't where we're at anymore. We have 8 schools that have not had a single case, but we're going to tell all those kids they have to go home. I understand what you're saying, but I don't see that as those numbers are just going to keep going up.
I just want to point out to the board, our responsibility is not to just the students and parents, but it's to every single taxpayer. We have 16 schools, 11,000 students. We were talking about no contact tracing from the health department. It's being done by principals who are already overworked because we have losing staff hand over fist. Okay. And I guess my question is who's going to suffer? It's every time we have an emergency that someone can't go to the hospital because we've contributed to the numbers rising. If there's any person, whether they have a heart attack, they need to, or they're in a car accident, they need to go to the hospital. So what are we doing to the broader community? Are we making decisions with everyone's best interest in mind?
I do think you talk about everyone's self-interest. I'll tell you, the one disconcerting conversation I had was with a parent whose child is not a great student, but is a good student, is able to do well in school, but this social isolation has just been an absolute disaster for her son. And they got to the point where they were looking for a therapist to take their son, and they couldn't find a therapist because there aren't enough therapists to handle the mental health issues. So I don't think it's strictly about this virus. If we're doing everything we can to keep people safe, if we're insisting on the double mask that we've insisted on and students are complying, we're moving to we have the 6 feet recommendation that we're following. I've had
when is enough, President Bertone? When is
So I think that if we follow the governor's guidelines and the numbers are such that we're allowed to maintain having schools open, for me, it's enough. For you, it's not. I get that. It's acceptable to me that it's not for you, but I don't think it's fair that you discount people that don't agree with you.
I think the point is robust debate, and I think that we really need to be aware of the risks we're taking for minimal reward, and that's how I see it.
I don't see it as minimal reward.
I don't see it as minimal reward either.
This is not a situation where closing down has no consequences. I agree with President Bertone. I've seen a lot of those problems with kids who were not having issues in school before, who are falling behind, who are having not necessarily mental health issues, but maybe some mental health issues. Kids have one shot at this growing up and developing thing. And I think it's important that we not take the county as a whole, the 500,000 residents of a very large county in Chester County. The numbers are going to be what the numbers are going to be. We have to manage what's in our schools. And right now we have 11 schools that are below the threshold. And I think we need to keep doing what we're doing. The kids need to be in school as best as we can. And where we have to shut down, we'll do it, but we'll do it targeted. That's my opinion.
Okay, and I'm done with the debate is over. In my opinion, everyone's going to vote how they vote, but I am in favor of a targeted survey that asks parents what is an acceptable level for them, and at what point is the board going to say what is the risk versus the reward? Because right now we're arguing over, think about it, it's hybrid. We have 5 days off Okay, and it's 14 days, including weekends. It's not 14 days of school. We're talking about 3 days or something like that for each child of lost instruction to get a reset to 0.
But would it reset to 0? That's my question. That's what I'm worried about, because these kids are still going to be out. They're still going to be running around in the streets in their asynchronous time. It's not going to go to 0.
It does go to 0. The school's numbers reset to 0, and kids that are sick will have to stay home.
And even if, and they're going to do that. I understand what you're saying. I personally think it would be incredibly arrogant to me and a disservice to every single constituent in Downingtown to assume that I know better than every single health official that has come out in recent
I think you're misrepresenting some of the stuff that the health officials have said. Governor Wolf has said that it's up to each and every local politician to make these decisions. He is giving the decision to the people that live in the community because we know best. And I think not having a robust debate regarding something like 3 days of classes to reset to 0, 3 days of instruction we're talking about. And I could be wrong. Maybe it's 4. I would love for someone, I can't do the math and have a conversation. I would love for someone to tell me how many days it is and just have a discussion if it's worth resetting to 0. So we start with a fresh state and we're not leaving parents in limbo, children afraid to go to class just to get back to 0.
8. I think it's 8 days.
8.
If the kids didn't go to school between now and the Christmas holiday, is that the question?
No, not the Christmas holiday. For 2 weeks to reset to 0.
Then it would be 4.
4. Well, that's what we're talking about. Is it worth students missing 4 days of school to reset to 0?
I think Director Grayhead would like to weigh in.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions and statements. I guess my first question is we keep on saying that, they're missing education, they're missing learning. And so my question is, what do we envision virtual looking like when we are closing the high schools and the elementary schools for 14 days? Are the teachers Zooming from home? Is it reverting back to synchronous, asynchronous? So what does the learning platform look like when we are forced to close?
That's a great question. Whenever we're closed, we're going to keep with the way we do virtual Fridays, which is synchronous. You start off with live instruction at the beginning of each new period or each new class, and then the teacher determines whether you go off and do an assignment or whether you stay on for the whole time, that kind of thing. So we'll do that during the 14 days or however many days that any given school is off. And teachers would have, after the critical period where the building is closed and it's cleaned and all of that, for the remainder of that time, which will be probably after the first 2 days or so, then teachers, if they wanted to be on site and teach, they could. If they wanted to be home, they could. So that'll be an option. And I think a lot of our teachers might want to come in just because they have their whole setup there with more than one screen and that kind of thing. But that will be their option, as well as staff and principals and such.
I guess one of my other concerns with all of this is just families that do have multiple students across different school buildings and how that impacts family life, how it impacts possible transmission, and how we as a district take that into account. It doesn't seem necessarily right to say that the high school student can't go to school just because of the number of cases. There's no good answers here, really. But it is concerning because, if that high school student was at more risk, then in theory, the elementary student is also at risk because he was exposed to his brother, say. So it's just a concern, it's something to think about. And then my last real comment is that we started virtual because of safety, because of safety for teachers. And while teachers and students and staff and really the community. And I am concerned about the safety of our teachers going into this holiday season. Just because people do want to go and they want to be with their family. And I know that we got an email today from our school saying, if you travel, please stay virtual for 14 days, but we're not guaranteeing that. So it's just, I feel like we're asking a lot of our teachers already to be teaching in this hybrid platform. We're asking them a lot to be able to be flexible to suddenly have to teach virtual at home. And then we also have now teachers who are worried about the caseload and how that impacts them and whether or not they can trust the community to not put them at even more risk. Because what seems like a small risk to me is a huge risk to our staff. And we've said from the get-go that the staff is the one thing that we can't lose, because if we don't have teachers, we don't have a school. So I'm having a hard time. Obviously, I want our students in school. Obviously, I think those who are most at risk deserve to be at school. I also don't think that we can think about this across the entire district. I think that it seems to be that the high schools and the middle schools are not as compliant, or for some reason there is more transmission there. So is it something that we could say like, hey, can the high schools perhaps take a reset, keep our elementary schools in? And I know that then it's like, okay, well, if you have an older sibling, can you also keep your younger sibling home for a couple of days? I'm just trying to think outside the box. And I think we need to think of this not as a blanket. And I don't know how to go about that.
I agree. I just don't think we can look at it taking into consideration if there's 12,915 students in our school. We've all made sacrifices. We've all been faced with choices that may or may not meet all of our personal wants or needs. But everyone at this moment has an option to educate their children in a way that works best for them and their family's health needs. To take that away and make everybody fit into one singular box it's something I struggle with. I just don't see that working.
I'd like to see a community survey go out to everybody, like the parents and maybe even our staff, at what percent positivity is too high. Is it 4%, 3%, 2%? Because we've gotten really far away from the Chester County guidelines. And there's no maximum to this number. Are we on this path till the governor pulls it, or is the local body going to decide at some point? And I don't know what the threshold is for the board, but for me, the threshold is here. We have very limited reward for going back, sending kids back to school for 4 days. It's a lot of uncertainty for families, for staff, for students that already are not attending. I don't see the reward. I am all in favor, if there is a way that we could keep our most vulnerable students in and sign this waiver, make an executive decision that everybody else goes home for 2 weeks this is going to take work on the community's part. Like, don't go out for those 2 weeks. Don't travel. Don't go see grandma. Stay home. And let's go back to school in a responsible way that has full staff, no quarantine, and 14-day reset.
Director Britton, I understand what you're saying. I'm curious, though, if the Chester County Department of Health has removed that threshold And they're saying it should be left up to the schools and we should look at it on an individual basis and not as a
They
county.
have not changed the guidance, Rachel. I'm sorry, Director Gibson. Respectfully, I'm sorry.
I just wanted to add that I've been thinking about the number of days, and the special education low incidence students would lose 10 days of instruction. They're in every day, 5 days a week.
Dr. McNeil, we have the option as a board to say we're going to keep schools open just for the most vulnerable. We could still sign the waiver that way. We don't have to follow the direct guidance of the governor, and it'll still give us a chance to get our total positivity down.
Wait, let me make one correction. We would have to close the total schools in those that are over the threshold for the period of time. The other schools, we of course would not have to do that.
Right, but we could go above and beyond for 14 days just to get all the numbers down, and it's only for the average student, it's 4 days of instruction. That'll give us ample time to get through the holiday. And I gotta tell you, I am just concerned that this document leaves a lot of leeway and there's no guidance, and the earnest is on the local board. So the board's not telling me what comfortability they are. We at 4%, 5%? Are we waiting till, teachers are out in such numbers that we can't
Well, the positivity rate of our district as a whole is less than 1%. So are you asking for our district, or are you asking for our county, or what number are you looking for?
I'm asking the board, like, it's 9 people's decision and we don't have any guidance from our community. We don't have a survey that went out that said, what's an appropriate number? So what is the appropriate number for transmission before you're like, no more? Is it when the hospitals are full?
I think it's the document that we were presented tonight from the state. That tells us when we have to close down schools.
And it's according to the cases. And I'm more concerned, as Ms. Gibson or Director Gibson said, is the positivity of our school community, because that's who's in the school.
And aren't people responding by sending their children to school? So to your point, are they comfortable with what percentage of people are sending their children into school? Then they must feel comfortable.
They don't feel comfortable. What I heard is that a lot of people are no longer coming to school. So
I have also heard that in the high schools, a lot of people are not comfortable. A lot of students are not comfortable. They do not feel safe. I have heard students say that they do not feel safe being in school, and it is because of the numbers. And to Director Gibson's point about having choice, yes, it's lovely that families can have choice, and it is important, and it is really, really important that especially our younger learners and our most vulnerable students have a choice and are in person. But we have to remember that our teachers don't have a choice, and we still have to protect them also.
I am concerned about our staff and our teachers, and I've always been concerned about our staff and our teachers, and it is a risk factor. But I also, my understanding, and certainly if there's data out there to say it, is that schools are not spreaders, and that there hasn't been incidents where our staff, our teachers have gotten COVID from a student. So to that point, I think, I hear comments that our buildings are cleaner than they've ever been, that everyone has a mask and masks are available, that every teacher that asked for plexiglass got plexiglass, that every classroom has a 6-foot range for people to be safe with our students. So I think that I understand that's a risk and that makes people uncomfortable, but so far we have been fairly successful, particularly at the elementary level. And to your point about the high school, we're closing them down for a couple of weeks. There will be some time to reset, and at this time and going forward, let's count how many students are actually coming to the school, and we can revisit this on December 2nd at our next meeting, or at the December 9th meeting. But I'm very reluctant. I'm very concerned about our neediest students, as Director Gibson mentioned, and making sure that they're in school as much as we can get them in school. So it's a balancing act. And we're not going to make everybody happy. And no matter what we decide, it appears from the emails I'm getting, from some of the comments we heard tonight, it's 50-50. So we have to make our own best judgment with the data and information that we have today.
I'd like the board to think about a decision we made some time ago to go into a hybrid model, because I think this hybrid model is one of the huge stressors on our teachers. It's a model that, in my opinion, as an educator, is not sustainable. So in addition to just the ordinary stress of a teacher's load, that teacher also has students virtually as well as in front of her or him. So we should have made the choice that you're either brick and mortar or you're not. But I think we tried to please everybody, and in the end, you really serve no one. So that this hybrid model, I don't know how that continues to work.
I don't think the hybrid model really had anything to do with disservicing, or I think that completely and absolutely was based on a space issue, right? So if it's the space that's the issue and the hybrid model isn't working, then we need to revisit the hybrid model and perhaps maybe consider in-person and asynchronous, or maybe we can just relook at that. But I mean, from what I can see right now, we're completely discussing safety and what we all feel is safe and what is a risk and what is worth the risk.
Well, you mentioned taking care of staff, and I know that
Of course.
causes stress can make you more susceptible to.
I'm not saying that we should not revisit it, but I'm just saying tonight we are not discussing that. I absolutely think that we need to revisit our learning platform, and I absolutely think that we need to revisit all of our supports. But I mean, we could go on for hours if we start talking about everything else that we also think we need to help.
Well, I'd like to add to the conversation about staff stress. 6% of them are now quarantined. Based on my math, and I'm not very good at math, so if someone wants to check it, that's 6%. That's taxpayer dollars, that's resources that are being wasted instead of making the programs more effective. Like, I would like to see this board have an honest discussion about who really needs to be in school for these next 2 weeks, and let people get healthy, get back to work, and use that time to make programs better. That's what I would like to see. If the board is willing to have that discussion, I am all in. I want to know who needs to be at school over the next 2 weeks. And we can go above and beyond this directive. It's not all or nothing. But there's 6% out. That must be stressful for our staff.
I'm happy to have any discussion. Whatever gets our students in school, wherever our teachers need support, I will engage in any discussion whatsoever. But who decides who needs to be in school?
We have an administration, we pay a good amount of money. They can make any kind of recommendation that they want, and the board can deliberate that.
And my kid and my neighbor's kid isn't identified, so they're screwed.
But the board can direct them to have any conversation that we'd like to have. So all we have to do is say with one voice, take the next 2 weeks to figure out what's the most powerful way, who needs to be in school the most. Look, we're heading into a high transmission rate, right? CHOP is saying it's going to last for 8 weeks. We're in week 3 or 4. If I can keep as many students that really need to be in school as possible and get other people out and make them safer, that's the choice, and that's the discussion I'd like to have.
I think that the people who are coming to school are the people who feel as if they really need to be there. So I think I agree with Director Gibson when it is difficult to determine who needs to be in school, because you could say that only high incident students need to be in school, but I think that maybe other people might disagree with that. So I think that if parents are sending their kids to school, they feel as if they need to be there. So I don't know exactly how I feel about that. I think it is a good thing to ask, and you want to make sure students who need to be there are there, but I just think that would be difficult to determine.
Dr. Lenardi, is administration recommending that we keep schools open?
Yes.
Thank you.
I think another point that will be well served is once all students are back in and we're into that third, fourth, or fifth week of greater transmission, how many parents will then be keeping their kids virtual while they're in the hybrid model? So I think that will be very telling.
You know,
that may be a question we want to ask parents.
So, but I think I think someone said, I think it was Dr. McNeil said, we'll know this by what the parents do, whether they allow their students to come in or not. But I also think like we're looking at this for the first time and we're saying, all right, there's a couple schools that are a little high. We should go virtual with them for a period of time. Then there's this rolling 14-day look. So we're going to keep looking. We'll see if the numbers go up. We might have more schools. We might have one come back, one go out. And then there might eventually be some new mandate from the governor that says, okay, we're all virtual after the holiday because it's too high, because if they've reached their maximum, who knows? Like we just don't know how it's going to go. So we're trying to just take one step at a time, and we get a new mandate. We're going, all right, here's the mandate. Here's how it would affect us. Let's see how this goes. And then, you know, when we get to the December 9th mark where schools would be back, they may or may not be back. We'd have to see what their numbers look like. So it's very, very fluid.
So to that point, Dr. Lenardi, we could go out for the next 14 days and then it do nothing for the greater good, except keep our students out of school. And then the transmission rate continues to grow and the governor turns around and says, no, you're out till January 1st.
Right.
And it's not 4 days or it's not 5 days.
That's right.
We're talking about a month, but we could have had them in school for these 2 weeks in schools where there has been not a single case. We have 8, right?
You're really explaining why my recommendation and our recommendation is what it is for that very reason. Yeah.
Okay. I hope that I asked the board to think very deeply about risk versus reward and about the limited information that we have based on community feedback, making these decisions. I hope that, you know, we don't have 1,000 little fires burning everywhere at the end of next week, because I can count, and I'm sure the community can too. And that going forward, we're having tough discussions that really weigh the needs of our most vulnerable students, making sure that our programs are designed in a way that students have time during the day and to get their work done. The model that we have right now is not ideal. We could be using this time to get better. That's one of the things when I voted to send everyone into quarantine, well, not into quarantine, when we didn't open the schools right away, I said I really wanted to continue to look at what we're doing and grow and get better at it. I really hope that this is a springboard conversation for the administration and the board to think deeply about what we can do and make sure that that happens, especially if, you know, a week from now, we do end up going into such high numbers, or 2 weeks from now that we are closed for weeks. This is our opportunity to get it right.
Do we have any other board comments? At this point, administration has a request for approval of the Pennsylvania Department of Education attestation ensuring implementation of mitigation efforts. Dr. Lenardi, are you asking, do we want to go virtual or continue with the hybrid?
Yeah, I think we'd have to agree on which box we check and then agree on that. And I need a little bit more clarification, because the recommendation, if we check the first box and we say some buildings are in, then what I would say is that DMS East and West, we'd begin tomorrow with the 14 days, but they would go till really November 30th is when they'd be back in school, right? So they'd go November 30th through December 8th, and they would return Wednesday, December 9th. And actually the Wednesday sounds a little odd because it's the middle of the week, but when you think about our staggered model, that would give Wednesday kids back, Thursday kids back, and then a virtual. They'd actually have 2 weeks before the holiday, if that holds. So I would recommend that those 3 schools do that. The other 2 schools Lionville Elementary and Lionville Middle School, both would be in that 3 to 7 day period. And we could easily say one of two things. We could either say they start tomorrow, so they go Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. That's 5 days. And in the 3 to 7, we certainly wouldn't have anyone in the buildings. We could clean the buildings. They really could come back November 30, and we could just do the other 3 schools. Or we could go the full 7 days and ask them to be on Monday and Tuesday, which would be November 30 and December 1. So there's some wiggle room there, whatever the board's preference would be. So I think we just need to iron that out. And then when we vote, if we vote to check the first box, that's what we would be voting for.
Okay.
So
I'm looking at the calendar because I'm a little bit confused here. So you're saying start the days tomorrow?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's your recommendation?
Right.
I think that, and I can't speak for the board, but my suggestion would be the full 7 days, not 3 to 7, for Lionville and Lionville Elementary.
And Lionville Middle.
I agree with the full day, going with the maximum. And if we are getting ready to vote on this, I do have a comment to make. I don't know if I should make it now or after we second for the vote.
It's up to you. I might want to wait till you hear what the motion is and do it after that. But if you want to make it now, feel free.
Well, I'll wait. I was going to wait, but I thought that.
Let me just be clear. So if I heard two of you, and that was my original recommendation. So if we said Lionville Elementary and Lionville Middle, they start tomorrow and they actually end up having 2 virtual days, which would be November 30 and December 1. And then they would come back to school. The Wednesday group, the staggered Wednesday group, would come back December 2nd. All right. And then the other 3 schools, Downtown Middle, East and West, would be out 14 days. However, it would start tomorrow, November 25th, and it would go through December 8th. They would come back December 9th. And so again, it would be the Wednesday group, the staggered group coming back the 9th. Let me throw that out as a specific recommendation. Director Crean.
Since the 3 to 7 days is an asterisk on there, I think that gives the administration discretion for the case-to-case basis that may come up. I would say in this case I would prefer for Lionville Elementary and was it Lionville Middle or Downingtown?
Right. Lionville Middle.
To do the 5 days. Those kids have already been out since Monday, so we're already. I mean, even though it's starting tomorrow, we already have a full day here. Since we have discretion, I would go for the 6 and get them back in school on Monday. It gives us plenty of time to clean every surface down. And it gives us 6 out of the 7 days. And then we get those extra days of instruction in person for the Monday and Tuesday hybrid. That's my opinion.
All right, if we could, President Paterni, if we could get some agreement on that, we're ready for the vote, I think.
Director Gibson, some of the other directors, what are your feelings?
Just on that aspect.
Just on 5 days or 7 days for the 2 Lionville schools.
Yeah.
Specifically, Lionville Elementary, they were on the lower end. I don't have the numbers right in front.
They were just
4. I would prefer to see them be able to go back as soon as possible. There is no doubt, I don't think anyone can actually argue the importance of the K through 2 education and how much that needs to be done in person.
Amen.
As one of the representatives whose children attend Lionville, even though my kids are virtual in the DCA program right now, my constituents have been active talking to me all day. Not one of them has asked for schools to be open. They've all asked me to close it. I'm speaking for my constituents. I know not everyone's constituents feel the same way. I'm asking that it's not the minimum. We have to do a little bit extra.
Is tomorrow a staff development day?
It's a work collaboration day, yeah. So
in buildings?
They could be, but they don't. Most will be home.
Well, but I'm just asking because if we're saying we're closing the building, either we are or we aren't. So just a question.
Yeah.
You may have to start the clock a day later. if you're leaving the buildings open for, I mean, I'm just, that's a mistake in letting me look at a calendar.
Yeah, well, yeah.
I'd also,
We decide we need to be consistent, and I think we're not distinguishing East, West, and DMS, even though the cases are a little different. So LMS and Lineville Elementary. I just think whatever, Dr. Lenardi, I think this is a decision for you, whichever range you feel comfortable with. 3, 5, 7. I mean,
I would agree with Dr. McNeil. Unless the board is going to weigh in on every decision, that we need to stick to one thing and let every single parent be aware that that is the protocol.
That's a very good point.
So it sounds like.
So I think a couple people didn't weigh in on the start Monday or start Wednesday with Lineville, the 2 Linevilles. So can the others just weigh in on that, please? Although I appreciate your comments, Dr. McNeil.
I said the maximum, so
Right.
that was my weigh in. Okay.
Yeah.
I think the 7 days would give the staff time to disinfect the building, if that's our intention.
Okay. Director Houghton?
Sorry. I don't know. I think I'm leaning towards 7, but I don't know. I agree that I want consistency. Whatever we decide on, I want consistency. I'm still weighing that what that number is.
So I guess I'm a little confused because we're talking about cleaning surfaces, and so it's primarily an airborne disease, and it seems like they're asking us to shut down schools to not necessarily make sure that the buildings are clean, but to make sure that people who are normally together then aren't together and we're not sharing air. So I would be more comfortable with a longer time, just to give more time for possible cases to show up, less time to just have possible contacts.
It appears that 7 is the preferred number.
Okay, so then let me rephrase this, and then we can vote. Okay, so Lineville Middle, Lineville Elementary will essentially be virtual on November 30 and December 1, and they'll come back. Their Wednesday group will come back December 2. However, DMS East and West will have a longer period, and they will start November 30 virtual, and they will stay virtual until their last day would be December 8th. They'd come back Wednesday, December 9th. And again, it would be the Wednesday group coming in only, as well as all the other kids, but just we would still be doing our typical staggered schedule. So if we check the first box, which I am recommending, then that is what we would do. All the other schools are below the threshold. They would all come back in their regular staggered format on November 30. That's it. President Tony?
Okay, thank you. So can I have a motion to approve that recommendation?
So moved.
So moved.
Victoria, I'll let you figure out the verbiage. A second, I'm sorry.
Plus, second.
Any other, I know Director Wisdom, you said you had a comment you wanted to make.
I do have a comment, and it's a little bit of comment. It's a little bit of a mixed bag. I actually wanted to offer an apology because we did make this promise, and I feel like we're only keeping half of that 2-pronged promise that said we would that we would follow Chester County Department of Health recommendations, but also follow this metric prescribed by them. And while keeping the promise of following the recommendations, we're failing to follow this metric. And now we're doing something completely different. So people who want to be in school right now are getting at least part of what they want, but people who counted on us to go back to virtual when we had those high numbers for 2 weeks may be feeling disappointed and confused right now. And those people who may have remained in brick and mortar with the expectation that we would return to virtual when the numbers got high now are getting something different than they expected. I want us to sign the number one option of the attestation to give us options, but I still don't know if in-person learning is the right thing to do at this moment because of the high numbers in the community. And while I'm here, hopefully you'll indulge me. It's almost Thanksgiving. I wanted to offer my gratitude to everyone who's reached out to me with their point of view, whether it was critique or advice or words of encouragement. But I also want to offer my gratitude to the people who may be watching now and people who aren't watching at all, who are quietly just sticking with us, patiently riding it out and understanding this difficult situation. I know no one's really getting what they want right now. The majority of parents wanted their youth to come back to the classroom, at least with the promise that we had made at the beginning. But I know there are others who want to be home. There are teachers that want to be in the classroom, but are also worried about the health of their families. They're stuck in a very difficult place and working ceaselessly, and I believe they're the greatest burden. I am so grateful for our teachers, principals, administrative and other staff, and Dr. Lenardi and everyone in the district working tirelessly to keep this all together. Also to the parents, because I have 2 young people at home, and I know how difficult it is. I hear all of you, and I often feel stuck in this place that makes me feel like I don't know what to do, and no decision is the right one. And I just want to say that I really appreciate the grace that all of you have offered us in this extremely ungraceful time as we make our way through this together.
Well said. Thank you.
Thank you.
Before we vote, again, I hope that the board members are thinking about what it might look like if the governor comes down and transmissions rates are so high, or the county comes down and says we're at capacity. What school is going to look like for students, and how we could be redoing some of the things that are not working, like we said we would commit to in the early fall. So I hope that this conversation is a springboard for those kind of conversations about making it better, because every time I have a student write me and tell me they can't keep up with this current model, being in school all day and their work, when I have a student write me and tell me I'm afraid to go to school, when I have parents reaching out to me saying that their spouses are first responders, I've had community leaders reach out to me today asking us to close in the form of people of the church and of the cloth. At some point, I have to start weighing the risk versus the rewards, and I'm looking forward to a discussion when the community informs the board about what is appropriate for them, so that we can make decisions based on judiciary and the social responsibility, because our community is a fabric. It's a close-knitted fabric, and what we do here plays a very large role. We're one of the largest school districts in the state, let alone the county. So thank you, everybody. And yeah, that's all I had to say.
Dr. Lenardi, can you tell us if when these schools go back to staying at home, virtual, will that be the same model that it originally was?
It'll be no. It'll be the way if you're in
Brick and mortar.
Brick and mortar. It'll be thank you. It'll be the way we do it on virtual Fridays. So every period you'll just get on the Zoom, and then you'll be instructed by your teacher to either stay on or go do work or do whatever the teacher has in mind.
If we were to return to virtual specifically and not just having these schools out, would we then return to the original schedule?
No.
No. Okay. So we never
do the asynchronous piece. That was the piece we got a lot of negative feedback about.
Okay.
Particularly with our youngest learners, but really many at all. I got so many emails from everybody that the asynchronous wasn't a good model to keep kids engaged.
Okay.
And so
right. And again, that might not work for every grade level, but it's our responsibility as a board. We're a young board member. Many members are new members. They don't understand the power that they have. The administration makes recommendations. and the board can ask for more information and make recommendations back. And so we're either going to use opportunities like this to get more information from the community, or we're not. Or we're going to use opportunities like this to see how can we do better, or we're not. And so again, I can count. I'm one being the voice of 50% of the community against 8 in this conversation. And I think we all need to just take a pause and remember that 50% of the people are not being listened to right now. They're not.
Director Crane, you've had your hand up, and then Director Gibson.
Patiently waiting, yes. I just want to say I would have preferred to get the Lionville kids, middle school and elementary, the extra instructional day by going 5 days, just allowing us to have that discretion, because in essence, our 5 days is 6 days. But I will vote in favor of this. I'd like the administration to have discretion. It says 3 to 7 days. If there are things like we have this extra day, that Tuesday off, and we can count that as one of the days, and really get that extra instructional days for the kids. And I think we're regional. This is a totally different thing than I had planned, but we're regional directors, which means that we represent different areas of the Downingtown area school district. We all have half the people wanting one thing and half the people wanting another thing, and those halves not agreeing with each other. So it's not 1 against 8. We are shutting down, unfortunately, 5 of our schools for up to 2 weeks. This just has to be more of a targeted response. The kids need to be in school if that is their individual needs. We can't make a blanket statement on who needs education or who is at most at risk. Every kid is different. And if their parents and the kids think they need to be in school, then that's something we should provide to them until the time when the state has determined that we need to close them down.
Thank you. Director Gibson?
I just agree with Director Kring. This is very divided. It is not a simple solution. Vice President Britton, you have said that so many of your constituents have reached out saying that they want to be virtual. It's the exact opposite for me. I've gotten very few of them, and more people who want to stay in school. I think this is a testament to people understanding that their board representative is a collective voice for the whole, and we need to discuss this as a community. And part of that is we have 80 square miles of school districts, and it's not, it can't be a one size fits all solution.
Director Graham?
I'm just curious if, so the schools that are getting shut, I believe I heard say that the count starts then on the days that we go back. Is that correct?
No, tomorrow. The count starts tomorrow, correct?
So then, but for the schools that shut down, so for East, West, it just continues even when we're closed. Is that the case?
It's called a rolling 14 days. So that's the case. Although I gotta believe we're not gonna have a lot of cases when the kids aren't here. And if we do have them, we probably won't really know about them. We'll likely know about a staff member perhaps, but not a student. So I feel like even though it's rolling, those days off are gonna be quite low for us. And I'm looking for more feedback from the state about how they expect that to happen. And in fact, we were asking them to, how about a hard 14 days where we look at a 14 and we look at another 14 that would be a little easier to do. But right now that's what it is. It's rolling. So yeah, we should be looking at it when we're off. I don't know that we're going to really have those numbers.
My concern is that we have high numbers now. We're going into a holiday. To magically assume that our numbers are going to be better is quite frankly silly. So basically we're asking our teachers and saying, okay, we respect that there's high numbers right now, but we're going to turn a blind eye to these high numbers that all of the students are going to be coming back with, and we're going to find out what those numbers are. eventually. So I'm just a little concerned about the fact that it is a holiday, the fact that all of the scientists have predicted that those numbers are going to do nothing but increase. And we are literally turning a blind eye to them.
Yeah, okay, I'd take exception to saying turning a blind eye. We will continue to count the numbers. So as soon as we come back, like let's say a school is off until December 9th, and they're virtual and they come back. And let's say within 2 or 3 days, we're counting their numbers and they're already over the limit of 11, they're closed again. So there's no blind eye. When they're over the numbers, they're closed. And so that's why I'm saying to parents, particularly with the parents of younger students, they need a plan B, because this is going to happen fast. If a school goes over the numbers, they're going to have to be closed for either 3 to 7 days or 14 days, depending on what the numbers are. But there's no blind eye. We'll follow them daily in all of our schools, both probable and positive cases.
I'm just concerned that we're putting our staff at unnecessary risk until we do know those numbers when we come back. A lot of the surrounding school districts are going virtual for a week, 2 weeks after Thanksgiving, and it's not for no reason. It's to keep the staff safe, or because they don't have the staff. I think that this is a fine program. I believe that targeting is fine. I believe that our younger students in particular do need to be in school, but I am concerned about the holiday.
I am too.
So
that's the other option. That's the other box that you want to do that. You want to go all virtual, and then we click the other box.
I'm just saying, is there another option to say, like, okay, well, for the week after Thanksgiving, we're virtual for the health and safety of our staff, of our community, and then we come back. Those schools that can come back. The ones that are closed because of we're following this is what Director Burton was saying, right, about going beyond. So I'm not saying that we need to go beyond, further, but there are certainly times where, like a holiday, where we do need to be mindful of our staff.
So we have a motion on the floor. If we're going to, we need to vote it up or down. And then if you want to have another discussion, we can do that.
That's fine.
Director Gibson, did you have more? I see your hand up.
I know, again, I just have a quick question, and this is kind of shifting gears, and if I need to move it to another area, that's fine. But with East and West needing to potentially close for a certain amount of time, what will that mean for our students who attend TCHS?
That's a great
Will
question.
they then be required to stay home? Because right now they're splitting their time. What's that going to look like for our technical students?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I meant to say it. So right now, I checked with them today, and their numbers are below the threshold. So even though if you're a West student and you're virtual for us, it'll be like it was before. They actually went back in person before we did. So we would do the same thing that we did then. We would take them on their given days or their given afternoons to TCHS as long as their numbers are below the threshold. So that, because it's another building, on another site, that's fine. It's just our building that's actually quote unquote closed.
So their homeschool would be virtual, and they would be able to attend their technical school classes in person as they were before.
Right. Which would be, I think, an every other day model. Yes.
I do have one comment that, 13 years on the board, and I've sat through many contract negotiations with our faculty and our staff and our administrators. And I know everybody is working really hard, but I ask our community two things. One, I know people are not following the rules, and they think there's this feeling of I'm going to be safe. The rule doesn't apply to me, but we are really in danger as a community because Everyone seems to be continuing to travel for Thanksgiving and putting all our workers, our employees at risk. And this is a very difficult decision for me because I am concerned about our staff and our employees. And I just ask, when we sit down and we start talking contract negotiations, it always amazes me the comments that sometimes are sent that, teachers and staff, they're glorified babysitters, they're only working with kids. We have now upped the bar. We asked them to throw their bodies in front of guns, and we're now asking them to be frontline workers in a pandemic, and that is the reality. So I am also here for our students, and I know our students need to be in school. So, but let's not lose sight of that when we talk about our educational community and our employees. So I do thank them for the difficult task that they have. I know a number of them are going to be very unhappy with our decision tonight, but it has not gone unnoticed, and none of the decisions we make are good decisions right now. There are no good options. There are no good choices. So I just ask that you consider that. Everyone who's listening, we probably have one of the biggest audiences we have at a board meeting. And just remember that the next time there's angst about your tax bill or schools or what we're trying to do here. Any other comments or questions? Can we call the vote, please?
Director McNeil,
Yes.
Director Wisdom,
Yes.
Director Blust,
Yes.
Director Houghton,
Yes.
Director Grab,
Yes.
Vice President Britton,
No.
Director Gibson,
Yes.
Director Kring,
Yes.
President Bertoni.
Yes. Thank you, everyone, for your time and your patience and understanding. Moving on to our action agenda of the finance report. Director Kring.
Thank you, President Bertoni. Item number 1, request approval of transportation contract amendment with George Kraft Jr. and Sons. Reimbursement is for 60% of the daily rate for the virtual school days from August 31st to October 23rd, 2020, and 75% of the daily rate for virtual Fridays starting October 30th. Estimated savings $900,000. Can I get a second?
Second, Wisdom.
Sorry, it's on mute. Anybody have any comments or questions? Call the vote, please.
Director Houghton,
Yes.
Director Kring,
Yes.
Director Gibson,
Yes.
Director Wisdom,
Yes.
Director Grab,
Yes.
Director Blust,
Yes.
Vice President Britton,
Yes.
Director McNeil,
Yes.
President Bertoni.
Yes.
Item number 2, request approval of transportation contract amendment with On the Go Kids. Reimbursement is for 60% of the daily rate for the virtual school days from August 31st to October 23rd, 2020, and 90% of the daily rate for virtual Fridays starting October 30th. Estimated savings $40,000.
Do I have a second?
Second. Blust.
Any comments or questions? Call the vote, please.
Director Grab,
Yes.
Director Kring,
Yes.
Director McNeil,
Yes.
Director Houghton,
Director Hunt.
I'm sorry. Yes.
Director Wisdom,
Yes.
Director Blust,
Yes.
Vice President Britton,
Yes.
Director Gibson,
Yes.
President Bertoni.
Yes.
Item 3, request approval of transportation contract amendment with Eagle Wolfington Leasing Corp. Reimbursement is for 60% of the daily rate for the virtual school days from August 31st to October 23rd, 2020, and 90% of the daily rate for virtual Fridays starting October 30th. Estimated savings $480,000.
Do I have a second?
Second, Wisdom.
Any
So,
comments?
comments, yes. So before we vote on this one, I evidently just missed the ball here. Didn't we have some conversation at the last meeting about our contract? And I believe Mr. Mattis was going to share some information about the findings that we had from our solicitor and the district's I guess, responsibility if we should be forced to close the entire district, et cetera, et cetera. There was a lot of conversation and we were going to get clarification on that at this meeting or
See,
before we approved.
yeah, and you see it's because of the direction of the meeting, and I apologize. I understand Mr. Mattis did have 2 slides to explain. I had a question about our liability with buses, and he did get an answer, so I will let him fill us in.
Okay, thank you, President Bertoni. Our first bullet on our next slide, Solicitor Donatelli was going to cover and just give the board an update on the transportation contract language changes that were discussed in our last meeting.
Sure. Director McNeil, what I did was I went back to each of these 3 addenda, read the underlying contracts to make sure that in the event that there was a failure of the transportation company to provide buses or a bus or any bus when school was in session, that the contract provided the ability of the school district to withhold payment of that daily bus rate for their failure to honor their obligation to transfer students. So the issue relating to the school district's obligation to pay for bus runs when the school was open that were not provided was reviewed, and language was baked into the addendum to provide that protection to the school district. And I can also suggest to you that in addition to that protection, we tightened up a couple of provisions in the addendum to make sure that the additional protective language that were in the underlying mother contracts, so to speak, was also baked into the addendum. So I'm very comfortable that the concerns that the district expressed at the last meeting have been addressed and have been addressed clearly in the addenda.
Thank you, Solicitor Donatelli.
You're welcome.
I do have one other comment for the board, is that, one of my other angst with this contract was whether or not we would get a state subsidy. And the good news is that the state has said they will give us subsidies. However, politics being what it is, and just to let taxpayers who are still listening know, the reason we have money for this is that our state legislator has determined to use our CARES funding, which could have gone to small businesses, to fill the hole in the budget. So while it is good news for us, it is not doing anything for the small businesses and the opportunities in our state. So just a point of information. Anyone else have any comments or questions? Call the vote, please.
Director Blusk,
Yes.
Director Gibson,
Yes.
Vice President Britton,
Yes.
Director McNeil,
Yes.
Director Houghton,
Yes.
Director Grab,
Yes.
Director Crane,
Yes.
Director Wisdom,
Yes.
President Bertoni.
Yes. Ms. Warhay, do we have any other visitor comments?
We do not.
Thank you. Good for you too. As information, the next committee of the whole meeting is scheduled for December 2nd at 6:30, and the next regular school board meeting is scheduled for December 9th. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving.